I was mandated with the very easy task of wrapping up this very long day. So I'm going to do my best. So we started today with a clear picture, I think, of the scale and ambition behind innovation funding here in the region with significant resources. I'm just going to mention two numbers, 207 million euros for the ERDF and 112 for the GTF. But also the responsibility to make them work better together as well with other funding streams. From there, a first thread emerged, which is partnerships. Whether it is at TU Delft or in the field labs we explored, we saw again and again that meaningful innovation happens at the intersection between public, private, and academic actors, and may I add, civil society as well. Governance, in that sense, becomes something that is no longer abstract, and it's about creating the conditions for these collaborations to actually last and to sustain the innovations beyond public grants, for example. A second thread, and I think many of you will agree, was complexity. We heard about fragmented funding landscapes, multiple governance levels, and the reality that today many synergies actually depend on individual willingness. But we also saw that strong ecosystems can compensate for it, for this fragmentation. So throughout the discussions, one idea stood out. Synergies are largely driven by individual willingness. So first takeaway, maybe let us be synergy champions. While, second takeaway, trying to embed this in the funding folklore, if I may call it like this, because we obviously need to move on from isolated instruments and agents or actors to interconnected systems and people who actually talk to each other. The panel discussion reminded us that innovation is not just about well-written proposals, but about people, ideas, and long-term impact, including social and environmental dimensions. No, there's absolutely no presentation. Then through the field labs and on-site visits, so from drone technologies to circular construction and hydrogen solutions, we saw what this looks like in practice. Real-life experimentation, spaces, collaboration, but also risk-taking built into the system. And there's one thing that stood with me, which is from Urban Reef. The person who presented said, nature is by definition complex. It creates complex ecosystems, which yet work together, are interlinked and are interdependent. And Urban Reef, in this case, tries to reproduce this for the built environment. And in many ways, in my area, as a policy expert, I try to think about policy in the same way, policy making as a living ecosystem. And maybe the same should be done for funding ecosystem, often linked anyway to policy. And finally, the good practices presented showed us that there is no single model, but there are common ingredients: strategic alignment, political will, multi-level coordination, stakeholder engagement, but also strong intermediaries. So if there is one takeaway from today, it might be that synergies don't happen by chance. They are designed, they are enabled, and they are sustained through governance, but also goodwill. And perhaps one open question for you to carry forward: are we ready to think of our funding systems and even of this synergy project as a living ecosystem, as a field lab, where coordination, strategic thinking, system thinking, and trust, shared purpose for impact, environmental and social included, are just as important as the funds themselves?